Okay, well, let's get started with the session this morning. So the title of the session is How to Use AI for Higher Leverage Work. And our speaker today is Trevor Sukraj. He's the GM of Exposoft Solutions. He is a founder and former marketer with several years of experience scaling tech companies and agencies. After starting with Exposoft in 2015, he went on to join a company you probably all heard of, Shopify. Did some work for Shopify, and most recently he built Divisional. This is really cool, a marketplace that matches companies with part-time growth talent. And he's generated that into 7 figures of revenue with more than 70 clients. So very accomplished. And he's a Forbes 30 under 30 recipient. With AI, he has worked at the Olympics as well back in 2004 and 2016. He claims he is a planner and a supplier. There's a few of us in the room, so he can go on both sides of the fence. Without further ado, Trevor, come on up. Let's see.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right. How are we all doing today? Fantastic. Thank you so much. This is an incredible turnout. So thank you all for coming out today to learn about a topic that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. It's called AI. So let's see how we're feeling about it. Just to get a little pressure check in the room, how many planners do we have? Show of hands, shout yourself out. Okay, awesome. And I got suppliers, rest of y'all, raise your hands. Okay, perfect. And how many of you have seen a session on AI before? Okay, that's what I thought. So today, I want to start by getting a bit of a pressure check on how y'all are thinking about AI. And obviously, given the topic here, I want to dig a bit deeper today. I don't just want to talk about surface level, here's how you can use it, basic prompts. I want to look at how you can use it in event workflows, but really how you can rethink how you think about AI in your day-to-day and how you're able to actually leverage it. So I want to start off with a bit of a poll here. So please scan the QR code. And I want to get a bit of an understanding of what's the biggest obstacle that you've been facing in using AI. So it could be whether it's in your day-to-day work, in specific tools, in your personal life. Please take a look there and just enter anything that kind of comes to mind of like what some of the biggest obstacles are. And what I'll do is I'll head over to the next slide and see what kind of pops up here. Okay, wow. Getting approval, too many options, results, knowledge. Okay, I'm seeing a lot around knowledge. Fear is, I think we just heard that from Andrew's presentation just now, fear and fun. Lack of knowledge, lack of training. Okay, awesome. A lot of great input here. And I think this is something that I've been seeing, I did a presentation at WEC earlier this year, has really come up a lot, is a lack of understanding and training. I'm not sure how many of y'all have access to AI in your day-to-day through your work, but there isn't a lot of training on it, right? Someone drops in Copilot and says, here's this new tech you can use. Here's your policy. Here's what you can't do. So don't upload data, don't do this, don't do that. But we're not going to tell you how you can actually use it in your day-to-day. So totally get that. Training, knowledge, definitely top of mind here. This is me in 2015. So I was as an intern in Exposoft Solutions, my very first job. And I want to frame this, because how many of y'all were WC? Just show of hands. Anyone went to WC this year? Okay, so I initially framed this concept of AI as an intern, right? And this is me, play to the intern. I showed up and I said, I want to do impactful work. I want to be involved in your team. I don't know anything, but I want to be a key part of your team. I want to learn from you, right? I had an incredible team of planners and folks that understood the work really well. And unfortunately, how many of y'all have hired interns before? Show of hands. Who's been hiring? Okay. Unfortunately, a lot of times interns get transactional work that is very well time-boxed and guarded because you want to make sure they can do it and they can do it well and they can learn from it. But you also don't want to have too much of a hassle to manage them. I remember that at Exposoft, I had the responsibility of setting up some of our CRM systems. So my boss said, hey, take 2 weeks, go and figure out how to use the CRM, set it all up for us, and come back. And I was dedicated. I said, okay, I'm going to go and research online about it. I'm going to use Google, figure everything out. I put together Google Docs and all this stuff. And I came back, and as I was talking to my boss about this product and how we're going to be using it, I wasn't getting the reaction I wanted. And that's because I just went off in a direction and came back, and he was like, okay, I could have done this in a couple days myself. I gave it to the intern, it didn't work. So that's the plight of the intern and one of the problems that I think pops up. Now, I want you to think about the plight of the AI intern. So a lot of people, again, you think AI is an intern because you can teach it to do what you want it to do. You want to give it a lot of context. The difference between ChatGPT and me, we only a couple differences, but one of the main differences is that it has access to the internet, billions of points of data, computing power beyond our wildest dreams. You can see how fast this gets back to us. The challenge in the day-to-day that we see with AI usage is that it still gets transactional work. It still gets things that are very guided and templated, write me an email, do this kind of stuff, and it can still be hard to manage, right? How many times have we been frustrated? You put something into AI, you wait for the results, you're like, okay, I know how to do this already. Why am I wasting time trying to figure it out with AI? That's what I'm going to try to change today with y'all, is really try to understand how can you rethink how you're viewing AI and think about it, yes, as an intern, but also as someone that can drastically reimagine how you look at your work and how you look at your workflows and look at it in different kind of layers to your work. So what we're going to skip, because I know there's just so many topics we can get into today, so I want to be efficient. If it's on your mind, handling privacy with AI, this is a really important topic. I don't think we'll have time to tackle it today. Which AI model or tool is the best? I'm not going to be going into the specifics. If you use ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, Gemini, this presentation is universal to any of them, so don't worry about, am I in the right tool? AI agents, all that exciting stuff. People are creating avatars of themselves and putting it on the internet. That's great. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, I'm happy to jam on it later, but not for today. And then, will it steal my job? This is a fear, right? We saw fear in that first part of the presentation, in the first poll. It's not going to steal your job. I can give you full confidence in that if you learn how to use it properly. Because people that understand how to use AI in this day and age will be an asset to any organization that they work at and can actually change the way that organization operates, right? How many of you have gone to an organization where you've come in as the first event planner or someone that's actually creating that department, and you've actually taken it from a one-person department and scaled it up? That is what you can do with something like AI if you have the knowledge, right? So again, not going to touch on this stuff. I asterisk a couple of things here because privacy and AI has been such a big conversation. I'm doing a presentation this Thursday at the MPI Potomac chapter in DC. It's also going to be streamed virtually. It's free for all MPI planners, so happy to share that information after, but you're interested in that, how to redact data, how to upload it, make sure you're being sensitive with it. And then which AI model and tool invest? I see you all taking out your phones and taking photos of the slides. I have an 80-page PDF free download at the end of this presentation that's going to have all the information that's in here, including which AI model and tool is best and how to evaluate. So don't worry about taking lots of photos. I'm also recording this myself, so I'm happy to share with you all. But let's get into it. Okay, so what are we actually going to cover in the next 39 minutes that we have left? So first off, why your prompts aren't working. This is something that I think when you think about AI for higher leverage work, not just, again, write me an email, we're going to talk about that. We're going to move from transactional tasks into what I like to call sparring. So not just give me this input, is it right or wrong, but actually, can AI help me think better in how I'm actually working with my job? We're going to be comparing good and bad prompts for an event task. So actually, if you're not getting good results, how can you, redirect that? We're going to show how to turn one-off prompts into very repeatable tasks. So not just you use it here and there, but how do you show up every day and maybe do the same task with AI and kind of create a repetition around it? I'm going to give you a guide and a checklist for your first 5 minutes when you go. I guess it is Monday today, so maybe next Monday when you get back to work and you've had a good week, how you can do this with your team. And I'll have a QR code at the end of how you can download the PDF guide that has everything that we're talking about today and is going to be covering it. So thanks again, Ryan Hilton, shout out for sponsoring the session. A bit about me. So again, I'm an event professional, both a planner and supplier. I wear the double hat. We're an event planning agency with ExpoSoft. We do conference and association events. But I'm also running Crystal Events, which is our event tech platform. We just launched it this year publicly. So that's something where I kind of put the supplier hat on and say, let me help you save money with your event tech. I'm teaching event profs about AI. Again, I did a presentation at WC this year. I was in MPI Virginia last month doing a full keynote session for them on AI. I'll be at CIC later this year for all my PCMAers in the room doing a session on AI and how to use it. And I'm also building an event technology tool, project management for event planners. So if you're frustrated with Monday, ClickUp and that stuff in your planner, chat with me afterwards. Love to chat about that. How can I use AI better? So let's start with this kind of larger concept. The incredible team at Soundings, and Tracy and her team, if you all have heard about them, put together a study called the AI Impact on Workforce Dynamics that tried to understand how event professionals were using AI. Now, I kind of adjusted some of the actual responses. I think the first one was actually content creation, then it was marketing, analytics, personalization. What they found was, and the frustrating part they found, was that people, event planners and suppliers, are not using AI for the really impactful things, which is analytics, personalization, like the deep stuff. They're using it for very surface level stuff, which is a very good point. But what I found, and what was frustrating for me, is that when you say content creation, when you say analytics, there is a large range of what that means. And the example that came to mind is cooking. So on the left, we have a meal that I put together, is salmon with risotto. It took me a long time to put together. I was very proud of it. On the right, I threw some spinach into a bowl and threw some salad dressing on it. And I said, I need to eat my 5 fruit and veg, so let me get this as much as I can. This is both cooking, right? When you think about writing an email, when you think about content creation can be write me this LinkedIn post. Content creation can be give me a 3-month plan leading up to my event that is categorized and tagged of how to actually do this on multiple platforms. That is both content creation. But the difference is that one of those is higher leverage and very impactful, and one of those is one-off tasks you're doing, immediately. So when you think about these kind of tasks, and what I want to get over today is really looking at AI in terms of different categories. So not just transactional. 99% of folks that I talk to, transactional is, can you help me write this email? Can you help do something that is very, straightforward? The part I want you to get into is the thought partner side. So how can you actually start to use AI to improve your thinking? And we'll get into some of the examples in a second. And also with automation. So again, I mentioned trying to repeat workflows. How can you use AI in your everyday in a repetitive fashion where you don't have to context switch and do it? It just ends up doing it on a repeated system from a template. So first, in terms of transactional uses, the way I like to categorize this is give me the output. There's a clear right and wrong, right? If you put a prompt into an AI tool and you say, I'm expecting a very specific output. If it does it wrong, I'm frustrated. I don't want to be using it anymore. That is a transactional task. And you can see writing, researching, summarizing, like these are very transactional tasks. This is a great use. If you are using AI for transactional stuff, this is fantastic. But this is only scratching the surface on what you can actually get into. Thought partner uses is help me think better. And the main difference with this type of usage of AI is that you are open to whatever output AI gives you to try to understand how you can improve your mental model and thinking. So examples here, if you're looking at researching, right, you say, I want to find all the events that are happening in Fredericton this year. That's transactional. It's either there or it's not. If you get contradictions in that and you have to start figuring out, well, actually, this doesn't make sense, or is it hosted in multiple events? It's only virtually here. That's where you can start to use AI to unlock some of the thinking problems that pop up in there. Same with writing, same with summarizing, brainstorming, decision support. We'll get into some examples later about how you can actually use AI, not just, again, from a transactional executional perspective, but thinking about the problem and task as well. And then I mentioned with automation, again, this is a largely transactional task, but it's do it for me on a schedule. So how can you prep for meetings every single week using AI? I'll show you an example of how to just run the same prompt that'll look across different areas. How can you do things with your team? How can you do performance reviews, like things that are repetitive where it's gathering information over time? This is kind of the higher level. I don't think everyone has to automate. How many of y'all have heard of Zapier? Just show of hands. Yeah. So Zapier, again, automation has been around for over 10 years. This is not an AI concept. Automation is if this, then that. If an email comes in that fits this, do that with it. That's been around for a while. So again, if you're curious about that, there's a big opportunity to automate things with AI. But I wouldn't be super, hey, I have to do this in order to use AI well. You can use AI so well in your workflow without needing to automate anything. And you'll notice with these examples that there's overlap, right? Writing, researching, and summarizing are not transactional tasks. You think about maybe they're transactional, but I'll give you an example with Fredericton, right? Transactional, what draws someone to visit Fredericton? That can be somewhat transactional. I'm expecting certain responses, take my notes and transcribe them. When you get into thought partners, maybe it's how can I position Fredericton as better than other East Coast destinations? You're open to other opportunities. How can you format my notes to see what the biggest concerns are and rationalize them? Maybe you don't agree with AI's rationalization. That's more of a thought partner side. And then you also have automation. When a LinkedIn event post goes up that mentions Fredericton or East Coast cities, send me an email with the link in that. Again, AI has to kind of figure out, like, is it just text of Fredericton? Is it like the context of it? So again, that's more the automation side. But I want you to think that every task you're doing with artificial intelligence can be put into different categories. So it's important for you, right, similar to an intern, similar to an employee, to make the decision of, do I want this to be transactional? Do I want this task to be a thought partner opportunity? When you're actually thinking about that, that's going to affect how you actually get the output and how you deal with the actual the next steps there. Another idea here is really, why aren't my prompts working? So you know how to think about AI in different ways. A thing that I've heard from so many planners and suppliers: I put something into AI, it didn't give me what I wanted, I'm frustrated, why is it not working? Should I switch from Copilot to ChatGPT? Should I do something else? Which of these emails are easier to read? Now, I give this example because AI for me is very similar to email. You can write a very good email and you can write a very bad email. A lot of people treat AI as just, I'm going to put my knowledge in there and see what happens. On the left, my dad turned 70 this year. He was a mechanic his whole life. He's not the best at email. He sends my brother and I emails like this. This is an actual email that I screenshotted here, which is just a paragraph of text with short forms that I haven't seen anybody use. I actually have used AI to try to understand what he's saying. But that's an example of what I call a natural language prompt, right? This is just, I'm going to brain dump into AI and say, here's what I want you to do, and hope that it works out. On the right, I have what I hope is emails y'all receive every day, which are well-formatted emails about, here's my introduction, here's what I want, the context you need to have, here's what I want you to do. Can you confirm you've read this? Does this date work for you, right? It's very transactional in that sense. Why this is important is, when you think about AI, yes, it is incredibly powerful, but it's still a machine. It's still reading your inputs the way that an individual would and trying to make sense of how to do it. When you give it too much information, when you jumble your thoughts, that's where it becomes challenging for AI to try to figure out, well, what am I supposed to really interpret here? That's where it makes mistakes. That's where it starts to hallucinate. We've all heard that term come up with AI. It brings things out of thin air that doesn't actually exist. So when you think about this and how to write, why your prompts might not be working better, thinking about it like an email example can be quite powerful. Is, would I understand this if I was not me? And I think that's where I think there's a lot of parallels. I spoke with Casper Studios, which is one of the leading AI product builders in Canada and the US. And one of their engineers, who came from Accenture, so he's had a really big background with AI. I said, Max, I'm frustrated because I've been using Claude for 6 months, and ChatGPT came out with all this cool stuff, and I want to switch to Claude, and I don't know which one's the best. Like, should I use Claude, use ChatGPT? What should I use? He said, Trevor, when we're building products that use AI, we are prompting it millions of times to try to get a specific output. So if there's a 0.001% difference between Gemini and Copilot in terms of how it actually runs it, that's a major problem. The other thing is, millions of prompts means millions of tokens. It's costing them tons of money. If I can get improvements, that's where it's going to make a difference. He said, for the average business user in any of these organizations, 80% of the results of a tool is how you prompt it. It's not about whether you're using one tool or another. Just like it's not whether you get a response from your team is not whether you use Gmail or Outlook, right? It's about how good your email is and does it make sense in the context of it. So don't worry about, am I using the right tool? I want you to really think about how can you get good at prompting? How can you get good at understanding how to use AI in any organization and tool, so that that's an asset you can take with you to do work in whatever organization you get into. So this brings up an interesting question. Now, how do I structure prompts? So I just told you you have to structure properly. What does that look like? Every interface, I got Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot here, all have the same general interface. You have a chat interface you can input in, you can attach documents, all that kind of stuff. The acronym that I've created for this is RHYME. And you can make whatever acronym you want. They're all kind of the same concept. At the end of the day, you want to start your prompts with the role for AI. So what is its job? What does it have expertise in? The reason why this makes a difference is that it primes AI to think as that person. I had an example before where I was trying to search up flight information to see when I should arrive at the airport. When I just searched, generally speaking, it told me to arrive 3 hours before. When I said, you are a travel agent, it said 2 hours before. So just prime examples, if you start saying you are an event planner, you are an association executive, you are a staff at my trade show booth, those are all things that can help it to prime and think that way. Information. So I like to think about this as the first day briefing of your employee, if your intern, whoever it is. You want to give information about your situation. You want to say, who are they trying to help? What is your train of thought, prior issues that you face? With the example I gave earlier, right, with the CRM, if my boss had told me we had already tried looking at Salesforce and this and that, here's why it didn't work. That's helpful context. So when you're prompting AI and trying to work with it, you have the role, you get to the information, try to actually give it a lot of context on how you're thinking. Don't just say, I only think this Word document is relevant. Say, when I gave this to my team member, here's the mistakes they made. Here's the mistakes I made that I've improved. This is why I built a template. That context is helpful because it, again, primes AI to think in a certain direction. Then you have the mission, the task, the role, what it actually has to run into. What do you want AI to do? And I like to split this up into items. If you're ever concerned about this is too big of a problem for AI to tackle, a fun thing you can actually do is go to the context, the role, give it everything. The mission might actually be, how would you write a prompt to help me solve this? You'll be so impressed with some of the feedback that it gives you. If like, well, actually, I would break it down. We'll go into a data analysis task later where it says, don't just give me one prompt to do everything. Split it up. Parse the data is the first step, then analyze it, then summarize it. I'll give you the prompts to do that. Your mission is what you want it to do, and you don't always have to be more specific. I think I've heard a lot about this when AI first came out, is tell it exactly what to do, otherwise it'll run off in one direction and do something else. If you are using AI for a thinking type of problem, a creative problem, how difficult is it to tell your team member, hey, I want you to be as creative as you can with this solution, but also think what's in this box? It doesn't work. So more specific doesn't always mean better. Again, it depends on what you actually want to get out of that specific prompt. And then expectations. So I like to call these like the ground rules, what to emphasize or what to avoid. I don't want you to give me more than 5 bullet points for this section. I want you to write in a certain tone. I know that the doc has this information. Ignore that. This is, again, the expectations you want to set for your example you're trying to run into. I'll give you an example of a prompt that is with an AV. How many AV suppliers are there in the room? Anyone coming from AV teams? Couple hands? Okay. So AV example, I mean, I'm an event planner. I send a AV requirements doc to different vendors for a conference we had coming up. And one of the AV guys said, hey, if I had more time, I'd actually have been able to analyze this better and tell you what might be missing, what's wrong with your original document. So I said, why don't we actually make a prompt out of that? So the example here is actually using a real, and this is in the guide that I'll share later, take an AV requirements doc that says we're using the Frederick Convention Center, or we're planning for this. Can you tell me what's missing in this RFP? So the role is you're an experienced AV professional with this AV requirements doc. You have a wealth of knowledge of where planners tend to miss information or get confused. The information I'm saying is we have this event that's coming up. Here's the dates of the conference. Here's what rooms. Here's the setup. I'm telling it what's actually in the document. I'm not just saying I'm uploading a Word document. I hope you can figure out what's in it. I'm saying here's actually how it's structured. And then this is really important here. I said the most common missing elements in an RFP are, and I just bullet pointed them off, because this is already helping AI to think, well, Trevor knows that usually when you're running an RFP proposal for AV, you underestimate the amount of labor that's needed for a given room. That happens a lot, right? Do you need a floater person that can kind of roam between different breakout rooms? Do you have one that's dedicated to it? That's a common issue. So this is kind of the role and information side. I got into the mission, which was analyze the RFP, tell me what's missing, and based on your understanding of AV tech, flag any additional information you need from me to answer the problems. Expectations. This was an example where we had a convention center and a hotel space. We're using both of them for function space. So I said, even though the venue requirements doc mentions that we have a convention center and a hotel, don't worry about the convention center, just focus on the hotel. And I said, limit your follow-up questions to 7. If any of you have given AI an open door and said, hey, tell me all the questions I can ask, and it gives you 300,000 questions that you can ask. Again, I saw a lot of planners in the room. If you're a planner and a vendor comes back and says, here's 35 questions, you're not going to answer it. So I said, limit those follow-up questions to 7. But that's an example, again, of how you can take that concept of like rhyme, right? Role, information, mission, expectations, and apply it to a practical event task. And there's ways to iterate on this, right? This is not a one and done solution. I didn't just get the result and say, okay, well, I'm great. I'm going to go back to my day-to-day. There are ways you can interact with AV requirements, event requirements, location requirements to start to figure out different pathways to take. Now, one of the things I'm always impressed with is scoring. If you give AI, a criteria and say, I'm looking at these couple venues and areas, here's my criteria, here's what I'm trying to do. Can you help to score and evaluate them in different categories? Logic trees, can you give me 2 directions that I could take when working with this hotel or venue supplier? Reformatting, like maybe you're getting the information, you want to put it into an Excel sheet. That's a really big opportunity. So there's a lot of ways to follow up on this concept and do it in a way that's pretty efficient. And again, I mentioned this earlier. Does it really matter how you format, right? AI is getting so much better every single day. Do you really have to matter on how you format your prompt? In the guide, I run through a lot of very practical event-related workflows, a lot of them involving event planners. where I show using a generic prompt that's just natural language, and I show using the actual structured one and how the output is different. So here's an example where, we're preparing for a conference. This is a sample example, nuclear energy conference. If you're a planner, you may not know a lot about nuclear energy, but you're running the association conference. How can you help the moderator to actually prep for that session based on the people that are going to be attending the panel? I gave it this initial prompt, and it came back with pretty good results, but I wouldn't say it was amazing. When I structured it properly and I gave it the LinkedIn URLs of the panelists that were on there, I gave it the URL of the conference agenda, so you can see other things in the conference. How can you tie it back in that session to build on that theme? This is what it came back with. So it gave me very specific, like, hey, Mirella, the act says this, this, and this. Your organization focuses on Y. Can you tell us like how you deal with that? Like, it was very specific without, again, me, I'm not a nuclear energy expert, but it was really good in actually navigating this. So this is an example of when you structure prompts properly, when you give it context, when you build it, versus you just fire something off and hope for the best, you can get really impressive results as it relates to events. I mentioned earlier about how AI can help you think better. And this is, again, not transactional. It's getting into more, how can I challenge myself and get better at using AI in that context? I have a slightly altered acronym. I call it RITA. I was trying to think of acronyms that would work well here. So role is still the same, right? But instead of thinking about it as the job title, think about it as, who would you go to advice for this? If you're an event planner, is it a veteran event director? If you are, someone working at an association, is it the executive director? Who's the role of the person you would be asking for advice from? And then you have ideas. So what does this person need to know? You're going to be asking it stuff of what they're considering and what has happened to date. So again, similar to the information side, but this is more, here's the ideas that I'm coming up with. The main difference here, instead of task, we're thinking about thought process. So the example we'll go through in a second is really looking at, I have two different venues we're trying to consider, and I'm trying to think about what the best ways to approach this are. I'm saying, my thought process is, here's why I think what the pros are to choosing the convention center over the hotel. Here's the people I need to take into consideration when I'm doing this task. And here's what's stumping me about this problem. The same thing you would do when you're talking with a boss, a mentor, a friend about your problem is how you should think about using AI. Because when you give it that context and you put it in that shoes, it's impressive what it can actually come out with in terms of giving you new input. And the ask, again, what do you want this person to do for you now? When you dump to your friend in the events industry and you say, here's all what's happening, do you want encouraging results? Do you want to just, hey, I understand you, I see you? Or do you want, in this case, likely a practical plan or result of how to actually approach it? So the case study we'll run into here, just take a quick look on time. The example that we'll run into here is venue selection. So this is, again, totally fictional. Everything I'm doing in here is fictional information, so don't worry about that. Asset management conference that's going to be happening in mid-April 2026, 2 days in length. We have a bunch of requirements here, general session for 750, all the different details. The reason why I think this is an interesting thought partner experiment is that usually when you think about RFP intake and analysis and venue selection, it's transactional. Which one gives me the best price? Which one gives me the best setup? In this example, in this imaginary scenario, the association is growing, right? Some of you all work as planners at associations, it's growing. They were at 400 people last year. Now they're starting to grow, and they realize, well, we can get more sponsors and exhibitors if we start doing one-on-one meeting pods to help people get more value out of the conference, the business conference. But that means we're going to get a lot more people coming. We're going to need more space, function space. So maybe the hotel we've been using for the last 15 years is not the right fit. We need to start looking at it. Now, any of y'all, again, who are planners will know, it can be really scary to change the setup you've been working with historically. So the example here is I gave it some constraints. We're looking at a hotel venue and a convention center. And the example that I'll screen share is, how can I actually compare two venues that are similarly priced and try to get new frameworks for decision making? So I'll exit out of this for a second, and I'll just pull up the comparison here. Can everyone see that okay? Okay, so here's the example, and I'll go to the bottom here and just show some of the info. So what I did is, and again, this is totally fictional, but I just modeled a couple of event RFPs of like responses from potential hotels or vendors. So this is downtown convention center in Toronto from our good friend Matthew Alfredo Linguini, who has given us a lot of information here. I didn't include any photos or anything, but you can see function spaces. It's telling what some of the highlights are, internet and technology, what you get. And then as a comparison, we have our good friend as well from the Downtown Heritage Hotel, Stefano Portobello Cremini, who is considering the hotel as well as a venue, and has all the information in here as well. So these are the two PDFs that I'm giving to AI. And the role that I'm asking it to do, I'm saying, well, you're an experienced event manager and producer with a background in B2B events. You have to help me navigate these two proposals. And the idea is, and I'm giving it all the context I just showed you in the PowerPoint, right? I'm saying, here's what it looks like. Here's how long the event is. Here's the expected budget. Here are the two proposals. So this is all the information you need. Now the thought process, right? I said, this is our first year managing the event. We're a PCO. We're coming in, we're trying to manage this event. The event was previously at a hotel. It's growing. We need to think about this. What I'm giving it context with, super important. We have a few members of the client's team I need to be considerate of. They have the executive director. They have the chair of the programming committee. It's a volunteer. They have the director of membership, who's more involved with the programming committee, but doesn't have as much saying power on how we actually choose. I'm giving it this context because I want it to think the way I'm thinking. Because as a planner, I'm in a position of, well, I don't know if when I communicate this decision that we're going to choose a convention center, if the chair of the programming committee is going to flip out that we're not using the hotel we've used for the last 20 years. So you have to give it this context to be able to build it out. And then I said what I'm leaning towards. So I said, I think we choose the convention center because this is a consistently growing conference. We need bigger function space. We can still use the hotel for hotel room blocks and all that kind of stuff, but we need to use this. It's easier for setup and tear down, all the stuff that a planner brain would go through. But I'm having trouble with the following areas. So I said, what framework can I help to compare the convention center and hotel options? How can I best raise and communicate this with my client? And then how can I get ahead of potential fallout from Sophie at the program committee? So what AI came back with after I gave the analysis, I said, analyze it, tell me if how I'm thinking makes sense, and then introduce me to different frameworks I can use with my team. What it came back with was quick take. So it said, your convention center mentality makes sense. It's growing. You probably should be using that. Here's the biggest issues I would see. And again, you can see it's linking. It's referencing the PDFs that I shared. So it says, if you're going to use one-on-one pods in a hotel that's going to include lobby space, in the RFP, it said, we'll put this in the lobby. Privacy and noise for one-on-one meeting pods are going to be an issue. So it picked up on that. It said, well, think about connectivity scope. Wi-Fi is included basic, but not for conference center. Look at that as an option. Look at hold expiry. And in the letter, it also says this expires September 22nd. You have two options to make a decision with in the next 2 weeks. Can you do that in enough time? Should you get with more time? And then it actually broke down, again, contents of the proposal, of what it includes. It did a budget sanity check. Now, again, I didn't ask it to do the budget comparison. I knew in my head these were similar priced options, but it did come out and say, actually, it's probably going to cost you about 21K more to use the convention center, which in theory makes sense. Hotel's going to have more concession with meeting space. Convention is going to cost more, but it gave me that context. It said both fit your budget brain, but here are different ways you can think about it. So it said, here's a weighted scorecard based on your decision makers you need to work with. And it kind of broke it down. And it said, well, here's maybe if your executive director, Derek, says the most important thing is the privacy and polish of the event. We want that to be the most important thing. Or the most important thing is we now have 60 exhibitors that are presenting to senior asset management professionals. They have tabletops. We need to have smooth entry and exit. Whatever you create in that framework is going to impact what actually happens at the end of the day. So that's something that I think was interesting. And then again, client inputs, it gave me another option as well on, if we choose this option, here's how we run it out. So I didn't actually, go through further of trying to, spar with AI and help it think. But you can see how when you give it context and information, it's kind of flagging things that for me as a planner, I'm already kind of thinking through because I've given it that context already. So again, example with the venue selection that I thought was quite powerful to run through. I will jump back in here. Here we go. Can you see that? All right. The next one I'm going to run through is how to move from one-offs to actual daily workflows with AI. So the example here is going to be recurring client syncs. How many of y'all have recurring team meetings? You have recurring syncs with your client if you're a planner? All that kind of stuff comes up. So what we're going to do is ask it to review past meeting notes and flag decisions that they said they would get back to me on or things that I missed. So this is something that you're running a lot. If you're a PCO, you have a ton of different events. If you're a manager that's running big and small events at your association. So the example I'm going to show here is if you look at Notion, how many of y'all use Notion? Anyone's a fan for note-taking and stuff? See a couple hands. So it's same as Google Docs, Microsoft, etc. I have a structure here of our Association of American Occasional Teachers, which doesn't actually exist, of their winter summit. And I have the action items at the top, and then I have bullet points, notes that I might take in the meeting that relate to different pieces. And then what I asked Claude, so I'll show a different platform just to give you an example of how this is consistent, is I said, same idea, you're an event planner and executive assistant. I'm prepping for this meeting. I gave it context on how my notes are structured. I said, we always have the title this, here's how it kind of looks like, here's where to find it. And then what I said is, can you find the notes? Can you tell me where the action items are? And can you tell me if there's anything that I might have missed? So what it did is it searched Notion, and it'll search Gmail, it'll search whatever app you might connect to it. It found the actual parts. It came up with the summary of what we actually did over the last 3 weekly syncs. And what I thought was interesting is it found something I missed. So if you look at this one here at the top, I have send AV proposals, registration setup, program committee, and questions about mobile app setup. If I search parking here, you can see at the bottom, it says parking rates provided by hotel seem high, Trevor to negotiate. I forgot that action item. But using AI, by searching and analyzing it, it picked up on it and it said, hey, Trevor, you said you would check out parking rates and you're not ready for this because it wasn't in your action items. So again, powerful use case. You can use that every single week, every day with your team. You can say when emails come in that include recipients that will be at a meeting that I have this week, please summarize it for me and see what's happening. There's a lot of ways you can turn what is a one-off prompt into a recurring system that will save you a lot of time based on access from your team. So there's an example, again, demo-wise, of how that could work. We're gonna try go fast here with the time that we have left and leave some for Q&A. Lightning round, so again, AI for Events guide. This is actually version 2 now. That has a lot of practical examples. It'll show you how you can create an event timeline with AI, how you can compare rooming lists. So you have your registration list, you have your hotel room block, how to compare those using AI. And then for my suppliers or folks that are doing sales in the room, how to actually take a requirement stock, see what's missing, how to do prospecting. So a lot of that will be in the guide afterwards. Okay, so a lot of information today. Monday, let's say you go back to work next week. What can you do with your team to try to implement this and achieve higher leverage work? So the example that I'll share here for priorities, I would start by making a list of 3 tasks you think you're doing repeatedly. And that could be challenges you're running into consistently. It can be tasks you're doing constantly. Pick one and use information from this presentation and the guide to try to write a prompt for it. The most important step here is number 3. Ask a member of your team to do the same thing. We all know that learning by yourself can be really challenging. I saw fear again in that first slide that I asked you all about your thoughts around AI. Run this prompt with your colleagues, friends, etc., and then see how it differs in results. What was good about your colleague's response? What was good about your response? Where you could improve? And then ask AI how you can actually improve the prompt to address any issues. So many times I will have a back and forth for many, many chats with AI, and at the very end I will say, we finally got it. Now, how could I have improved that initial prompt to make it better fit so we avoid all this stuff in the future? Same as a colleague, right? When you run an event and you have an issue and you fix it, you improve your SOP for next time. It's the same thing you're going to be doing with AI. You want to constantly be improving around this. If there's one thing that I would also encourage here about higher leverage work in AI, it doesn't just have to be work. It can also be your personal life. How many of y'all have used AI for personal pursuits? Anything? There we go, handful of hands. I've used AI in so many personal efforts, DIY stuff on my home. I was on the phone with a mechanic about my Chrysler van where they were asking me to replace a certain part. And I was like, give me a second? I did a quick search to see, do I actually have to replace this? What does it mean? And was able to get back to them. So I encourage you, just like a language, the more you practice AI in your personal and professional life, the better you're going to get at it, the more comfortable you're going to get at it. And just like a language, when you leave your job at Exposoft, you join another company, it's going to stick with you. And it's the same with AI. Your knowledge about AI will not change as you leave organizations. That's a skill you can continue to have. I kept talking about the guide, so here's the guide. Please scan this, and if anyone misses it afterwards, let me know. But this is a PDF that has all the information on what I talked about today, all the info on those step-by-step prompts, how to pick tools, how to think about all those different areas around AI, conversations with your team. So I encourage you to check it out. And if there's feedback that you have, please let me know. We're constantly iterating on this and trying to improve it. So if you have anything you think is missing, I hope the next guide will probably be split out because I think 80 pages is already a bit too long, but we'll try to get into that shortly. So yes, and I'll give you, I could probably give you a quick preview as well at the bottom here. Where are we? Yeah, for events guide. Yeah, so you can see here, here's the context that it includes. It's looking at timelines in AI. Do you need to learn it? How do I adopt it? AI platforms to pick. I think at the bottom here we have the actual prompts as well that you can run with. So yeah, a lot of context there that I think y'all could probably benefit from. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this. I hope you learned something today. If you are looking to improve your team's AI knowledge and how you actually tackle it, please chat with me. I'd love to help. If you're looking for event technology, happy to chat about that as well. But overall, I really appreciate the input, and I think we have a bit of time for Q&A, Run. Yep. So yeah, if anyone has questions, please shoot. Yes, yeah, go for it.
As with any other AI question, this probably doesn't have a short answer. I'm a hotel guy.
Yeah.
We're seeing obviously how people search hotels shifting big time. Google Analytics, AI is going this way. So in past years, obviously, they've learned how to maximize SEO, how to position themselves the best on delivering the best content and queries. Where's a good resource now as we sit in this journey to start learning about how to position yourself, like for example, as an independent hotel, how to make sure that that content, desired content is reaching?
Yeah, it's so just to repeat the question. So if you're a hotel or you have a specific site that's starting to see decline in traffic, but you want to make sure your content is being formatted for the user, and I'm guessing just to imply there, you're saying not just searching online, but also searching using AI. How can I start popping up when people are saying hotels in Fredericton as an example? Is that kind of where you're? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So and it's really good question. So there's again, if you use AI just as put on your marketing hat and ask it to take on that role and say, here's my website, can you tell me, are there any glaring issues? They might be able to figure that as well. It can actually be pretty good at it. What I would actually encourage too, and this is something that we're going to see happen more and more, AI, when it takes information across the web, it looks for certain things. It looks for ways that it's formatted, that it's structured. So if you actually, again, similar, take a couple pages from your website, put it into AI and say, I want to make sure this is optimized so it gets picked up on when people are searching using Copilot, ChatGPT, et cetera. It might give you some good feedback on saying, here's how to actually structure your website so that it's made for the AI generation versus the SEO generation, which is, yeah, it was different. But really good question. Yes, Tracy. No, definitely not. I think it's largely about the formatting and how you actually have that information. A fun exercise I might encourage any hotels and venues to do is to actually ask that question, but say, when you give recommendations to someone, what do you look at? So is it just the structure of my website? Because actually when I search, Tracy, to your point, when I search, I actually say reference TripAdvisor and Yelp ratings. Reference this, like don't just pull it out. Reference ones that have TripAdvisor ratings in the last 2 weeks. Like again, I'm a nerd with this stuff, so I prioritize it. But you can ask AI to actually say, what do you reference? Because maybe, again, in that example, when it's pulling hotels, yes, it's looking at structure of the page content, but it's also saying, I'm looking at TripAdvisor because I know that TripAdvisor is one of the leading ways that people search. So that's what I'm going to be. So maybe that tells you, I need to focus on TripAdvisor and improving our ratings there so that we show up when people are searching for hotels in a given location. But yeah, really good Paul. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it for the opportunity. Perfect. Yeah.